Hi, and welcome to Mid-South Viewpoint. I'm Byron Tyler. Glad to have you here today as we welcome Pastor Ralph White of the Bloomfield Baptist Church in South Memphis. Ralph, it's always good to have you here on Mid-South Viewpoint.
Appreciate you having us. Good to be here.
You called me a couple of weeks ago, and you were right in the middle or just concluding a situation that really sent a shockwave through our community after Memphis police officer Sean Bolton, on a routine traffic stop, was shot. And the individual, Tremaine Wilborn, 29 years old, is an individual that you knew.
Right.
First of all, tell me about Tremaine and when you first met him. I believe, did he live in the neighborhood where your church is?
Right. He lived in a housing development directly across the street from my church. Montgomery Plaza is the name of the housing development. And I've known him from a small kid up. We had many activities in the community he would participate in, and just an average young man, played basketball, came and ate with our men, et cetera, in and out of the church. But he was constantly around us. And as, young people grow up, they kind of grow away. And I think I heard that, Tremaine is in jail. He robbed a bank. I said, what? And so we went on and on, that time passed. And after he got out, I got a chance to talk with him after that. And there again, there was not just a constant communication, but he was in the neighborhood. And then when this situation came up, man, I saw this picture. To my wife, I said, I know that little guy. And she said, yeah. I said, yeah, I know him.
And when you say little guy, of course, I know your age in comparison. Yeah. I mean, he's 29 years old. Obviously, he's a grown man.
Yeah, he's a grown man. See, my kids are older than he is.
Right.
So when I said, I know that little fellow, but yeah, young man. And to me, that's what they are. When you look at me, I'm 67, and that's a baby. But anyway, and that's the way I see these. They're still children. They're still kids. And at some point in time, they missed something in life that took them in the direction that they chose, and we look at that from a standpoint of maybe we missed some opportunities to really bring those young men in. So to me, it becomes a thing of my saying, "Hey, I've searched myself. Could I have impacted him more,
And how could you have possibly impacted him more? And what are the opportunities that we possibly have missed in not reaching Tremaine?
Well, and I just don't, I'm not saying him specifically, but I think we do miss a lot of opportunities, and I feel that we do quite a bit in reaching out to young people. But even in doing all you do, when you see something like this, if you are really concerned about the future of not just him, but our city and our young people, you ask yourselves, could I have done more?
Yeah, and really, he represents, in this case, many youth in our community.
Definitely so.
Those that you try to reach out to through the ministry of Bloomfield, the different events that you have, prayer vigils you have about crime. Each year you do the Hands Around 201 Poplar, where the faith community comes out, joins hands, and prays about the crime issues in our city, which are quite statistically high and one of the highest in the country.
Yeah. And we get out in that neighborhood. We go out. We spend 24 hours a day in the neighborhood praying, talking to people. So it's not that we're not doing it, but even in doing it, you ask yourself, did I miss something?
Yeah.
And so we just have to intensify our efforts in reaching out to these young people. But when I saw his picture, I told my wife, I said, I'm going to talk him into giving himself up. And I didn't know how, but I woke up early that morning and it was on my mind. I had another meeting, but I went by this certain place, dropped my card off, said, have this young fellow call me. This was another fellow who I knew, possibly knew him because it was in the neighborhood. I got a call, and the call said, hey, meet me such and such a place. And we had to pull that together. I said, I don't know that that'll be good, we need to decide where we're going to meet and how we're going to meet. And we orchestrated all of that and eventually wound up turning him in to the U.S. Marshal.
And so the whole time that you were thinking about, from the time you saw his picture on television, recognized that you knew Tremaine, and were looking for a way that you could talk to him about turning himself in.
Right.
Did you already think through the process of, what would happen or what potentially could happen? He wasn't armed and dangerous, obviously, at that time.
I guess after you pray on the thing and you feel that the Lord is in it, and I definitely did, because everything that I decided to do, it worked like clockwork. So I saw that the Lord was orchestrating.
So you really sensed the presence of God directing you and guiding you through that. And of course, you met at one of our parks. I think was it on Riverside that you guys met?
I met on Court Street. On Court Street, right? Not almost around the corner from the Federal Building, so not far at all. And that's where we met on Court.
Now, had you contacted the U.S. Marshals prior to that meeting?
Right. We had an attorney who actually made all the plans. She made all the calls to make sure that, we talked to MPD and the U.S. Marshal, and in the middle of him coming to where we were, there was a change of heart. He says, I don't want to go into the MPD. And so we had to say, okay. But she had called both MPD as well as U.S. Marshals. So we called them and said, look, we're coming to you guys. And that's when we made the transition and went to the Federal Building.
And everything was very peaceful?
Very peaceful. And I was just amazed. Now, when we pulled up, you would have thought it was an episode of CSI or something like that. There was all these guys. But they were armed because he supposedly was armed. But
was he armed at that point?
No, he wasn't armed. And someone asked me, how did you feel riding in the car with maybe 2 or 3 of his friends and him? I felt fine. There was I had no problem with it at all.
You're used to walking up to, in places of our city where gangs hang out and just up close and personal and confronting guys and just sharing the message of Jesus Christ and the love of Christ.
Definitely so. And, some people look at it like, and I don't put the same hat on these young guys that maybe law officials do, and they have their job to do, and they have to, put people in categories. But I don't. Billy Graham had an article I was just reading the other day, and it said that I've never seen a sinner who sinned so bad that God couldn't forgive them, and we have to understand that. This young man has killed someone, but he's still a soul, and he's a soul that's salvageable.
There's a place where obviously our heart does grieve for the family of Officer Sean Bolton and the service and the job that he performed for us, trying to protect us as citizens here in the city of Memphis. And we do, and our prayers do still go out to his family. Right. And what we're doing today and sharing is not to condone the actions of Tremaine Wilburn, by no means, but really to make a point, because it's easy to get so involved in the emotion and in the heartbreak, which it is. It's just gut-wrenching to think about the horrible thing that took place when Officer Bolton was shot.
Yeah. And we understand that. And they're two different things. That has happened. We mourn with the family. We pray with them. And we pray that God would strengthen them to go through this. Yet I understand that Tremont has kids. He's got a grandmother. He's got relatives and so forth. So there's hurt on both sides. And then he's a 29-year-old young man who, if he gets a life sentence, he's got to go through that. And we could say, well, let him serve that sentence as a sinner, or he can serve it as a saint. So, we have a job to do. We have an opportunity to. And
there's some people, Pastor Ralph, that would say, as heinous of a crime as that was, he deserves whatever punishment. Of course, by the law, yes, he does, according to the laws of our land. But even some people would say he needs to go on, not even really care about his soul.
Yeah.
But even Jesus on the cross, there was 2 criminals that were on each other side of him, that were crucified at the same time. And Jesus extended salvation, offered to both, but there was one specifically that said, Lord, please remember me. The heart of man is deceitfully wicked above all things. And the only redeeming factor about it is the sacrifice that Jesus Christ offers. And that message, some will receive and some will not receive that message, of course. But we're still, as followers of Christ, commissioned and commanded to share that message of love. And you do it through your God So Loved, and that sign is very evident all over our community.
Yeah, and we have to understand, murderers, robbers, these are the people that Jesus died for. And how can we hate those that Jesus died for? We don't love or condone what they did, but we love them even though they do what they do. And the Bible said, while we were yet sinners, one writer said, while we were yet sinning, Christ died.
After Tremaine turned himself in and you walked away, what was your feelings like? What was the emotion like for you at that moment?
Well, there was a sense of relief because we found, we heard men say there was a mindset of killing this young man. I don't know. Nobody came and said, this is what I was going to do, but these were the vibes, and this was the word that we were hearing, that there were those who had intended to, take his life. Now, we can't say that factually, but we've heard it so many times that we feel that was a reality.
There was a lot of anger built up.
Definitely so.
I'm also thankful that situations didn't turn out like it in St. Louis and other places of the rioting that potentially could have happened either way. Thankfully, that didn't take place.
And that was the possibility. That very well could have happened. And so there was a sense of relief that, hey, we brought Memphis out of that. That's the last thing we need, with the climate we have here and things escalating even now. We see different protests, when we talk about the young Crawford boy who was killed a few weeks ago. You've got families who are upset and communities that are upset. And there's no telling what could have happened if this had gone a different way.
Right. Why is it, do you think, that it's important for a pastor like yourself and pastors in our community to engage these issues like crime and other injustices that we see in our community?
To me, and as I look at it, I look at me and where I am with Bloomfield. This is something that I've always done. Some ministers feel that, well, hey, maybe this is not my calling. I'm more of a teacher. I'm more of a whatever, and possibly so. But I think if we're going to make a real impact on this city and make an impact on the crime, we're going to have to leave our pews and our pulpits and actually get on the streets where these young people are, because I feel that while we're waiting on them to come to us, they're waiting on us to come to them.
Because supposedly violent crime is on the increase in our community.
So.
In the last 2-3 years, the percentages have gone up, I understand.
This past weekend, we had, 5 murders?
I think it was 5.
5 murders, and and we can't blame the police director, the police. They're here to try to keep things under control, but I think we have an obligation to our communities. If we're pastors in a particular community, I think we have an obligation there to reach out, to embrace these young people, bring them in, come up with programs that draw them, and giving them some life-changing experiences so they look at life a different way. So it becomes our duty to change the world, regardless to what we say and what excuses we make. That's not what I do. Just because it's not what you do, it's not, it doesn't say it's not what you ought to be doing. So I think we've got to intensify that. And speaking of that, I've got some things that God has given me that I'm going to share with the city, especially the first of next year. We'll look at some things in February, which is Black History Month, to accompany the Hands Around 201 Poplar. We're going to declare a moratorium on crime in the city, and we're going to show the pastors and communities how to do it, a community at a time, but simultaneously saturating the community and the city with our presence every day for that whole month. And see, crime really is one of the main reasons for the poverty that we see in our communities, along with joblessness. But when we see young men and young women who look like me, who continue to fill the halls of 201 Poplar every day, who are issuing out $200, $300, $500 a day, and we never recoup that money. We're talking millions or billions of dollars that leave our community that we don't sleep in, we don't drink, we don't eat, we don't ride in, and it goes, it's gone. And so we talk about those kinds of things, how we are really supporting the system per se, with funds that are leaving our community that never come back to us.
Well, and it's a revolving door, too, as you mentioned, with,
right.
At 201. And even in the case here of Tremaine Wilburn, 205, he was convicted of robbing the Friendship Bank in Covington. He was on supervised release after being sentenced to 10 years for that robbery. And so we're seeing, perpetual crimes just continually be committed, and there's not really change. Can we change this?
We can. We've got to implement programs for when he comes out. We've got to have something in place to catch him. There's got to be a net that catches him and actually puts him in a place where he can pull away from his old environment. And that's the thing. He's right back into the same environment with no job. So with no job, what do? You resort to the same things that got you in trouble initially. So we've got to sit down, put our heads together, working with churches, businesses, the administration, and say, how do we fix this? And we have to have a program that really is not self-serving when it comes to us. But what do we do to help the greater community? And I think with politics and other entities, they're self-serving. Politicians, many times, I'm running for a position because I need this to run for another position. And we're never really looking at, while I'm here, how do I help fix, society? And we've got to have leadership that really looks at the problem, say it's not all about me. But now that I'm in this position, what do I do? How can I use this position to help my fellow man? And we have a hurting community. And what they've done is they've established their own society now, their own language, their own music, and their own way of getting, I'm going to get it, you've got it, and I get it by any means necessary. And this is why we see what we see when we're shooting women down in the streets and robbing them and all these kinds of things, stopping people at stoplights and getting out of the car and robbing them and getting back, young people, good-looking young men and young women who if we looked at them, they look like our sons and our daughters, and we've got to do something, and it comes with a passion, and I think we've got a lot of government with no real passion.
Pastor Ralph, you mentioned about programs, and I know one program that you've been involved with, and after this program airs, you will have already have done another one of these Guns for Gas programs. Now, because of the high crime rate, there are many people who are going and getting their carry permits. They need to be able to protect their own property, which is our right as Americans to bear arms, to be able to protect their person and their possessions and their family. But you're asking people to give their guns away.
Well, you're different class of people. Like a guy driving a car that he stole with no license and no tags and so forth. We need you to turn that one in. But the guy who's going through the process, he's not affected. So it's the same concept. we got hundreds of guns out there that are not registered, that are just lying around in homes, people who've passed on, husbands who died, and there are 2-3 guns in the house. The wife can't use it. It's just there. So what we're saying, let's take it. Someone breaks in your house and sees those guns, get them, and those guns on the street, and they're committing crimes, et cetera, with those guns. So if you have guns that you're not using, or you've got a gun that's around you, you say, hey, I don't need this here. We've had situations where individuals have, unfortunately, a few weeks ago, a young man picked up a gun. He was 4 years old, playing with it, and shot himself, killed himself. And so these kinds of things, when guns are just there and people want to dispose of them, we're asking you to do just that, because we have had guns that have been stolen, and then they show up in, some kind of criminal activity. So these guns, and because we've had that, individuals say, well, we're saving our guns, we want to protect ourselves. We want you to do that. But in that, the last time we had a gas for guns, even though that was still out there, and that was a comment that was being made, we took up over 700 guns. So they're there, and we want to get those guns off the street, and these guns will never appear on the street again.
Did you get an opportunity to see Police Director Armstrong's address to the Sean Bolton family in the memorial that took place at Bellevue Baptist Church? His efforts to see unity in our community. I know his heart was broken. I mean, I watched. I didn't attend the service, but I did watch his address, and it was very moving. Did you get a chance to pick up any of that?
I saw parts of it. He's a great guy. Great director, and with all the budgetary problems that the city's having, it makes his job difficult. Having to lay off policemen and then still have the escalating crime, those two, they don't balance. So he needs much prayer. I mean, he's a great guy. He's very sincere about what he's doing, as relates to eliminating crime, and with the resources that they have. I think they're doing a tremendous job. Let me say this, too, to the police officers. I have the deepest respect for our police officers and the job that they do. In light of some of the things that are happening all over the country where police are abusing authority, et cetera. But even in that, they have a very dangerous job. The simple traffic stop could be the thing that ends their life. So we have to be very optimistic. We have to look at what they're doing. We have to be fair in our observation of the police and what they do and the things that will happen across the country. Without the police, we could just imagine the chaos that we would have in our communities.
And I think percentage-wise, there's a smaller of those who would fit in that category.
Oh, definitely.
But at the same time, we need to make some changes too, so that our police officers and those first responders have a safe zone to be able to get certain counseling they need in the process of, they see and witness some pretty horrible things that we never see. Even the news can't even show all the things that happen, and that gets bottled up inside. And I understand that they can't safely go and counsel with somebody without it being put on their record. But, they're human beings. They need to be able to debrief, to be able to let some of that emotion out, and to be able to share and get some help in dealing with some of the things that they experience on the streets.
Because me personally, everybody has his or her calling, and I think what I do, I can do, and I do it well, but I don't know how I would survive as a police officer. There are certain things that people are called to do. I think this is a calling for many of these guys, but it's a very dangerous calling, and our hats off to them. And we need to pray for them, for their covering and their protection, because at the end of the day, they're called to protect and to serve, and they're there for us. So we don't want to make it seem as if, hey, these guys are bad. No. I have friends who are police officers, guys that I love. I have one or two of my ministers who actually are police officers. So, we need them, the firemen, the police officers. We need all these people, and we need to look at the government to say to them that we need to give them what they need, their retirement and things of this nature. They're the last on the list whose benefits should be taken because they've invested so much, in their jobs and in protecting our people. So this is my position on that.
Well, Pastor, I want to thank you so much for standing in the gap for our community and what you do to make Christ's kingdom known in our city. And thank you for what you did to reach out to Tremaine Wilborn and to help him to turn himself in. And again, as we pray for that process, his family, and of course, the officer Sean Bolton and his families and friends too, praying for them, praying for our city.
Right.
Again, and being thankful to God that we didn't see an outbreak of riots and things like that. There's some great things happening in our community. Despite all these crime statistics we hear about, God is up to some wonderful things in our community.
Oh, definitely so. I think this is an opportunity for the body of Christ to really come together. I don't look at problems, and we do have problems, but I look at solutions. Somebody says, why? I said, why not?
If somebody wanted to get in touch with you to find out more information about Ralph White, what can they do?
Well, you can always call the church, area code 901-948-3078. And I kind of go out on a limb. I say you can call 901-481-3320. That's my cell phone. So they can reach me there. So we're accessible. And if they need me to pray for them or they need to pray for me, just call me and let's hook it up.
Well, brother, you are a blessing to our community. And I just appreciate our friendship over the years, too.
Yeah.
And thank you for calling me and saying, you wanted to tell this story. I know sometimes the 6 o'clock news has limited time, and I think the story was shared, but I don't think the complete story was all told, and so I think we were able to do that here on Mid-South Viewpoint, and I appreciate you stopping by.
Appreciate you always, man.
Thank you so much.
God bless you.
Friends, that's all the time we have on this edition of Mid-South Viewpoint. Thanks for stopping by. I'm Byron Tyler. Hey, we'll talk to you next time. Bye-bye.